Now let's go to the UK and the fall of the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, arrested last week on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Following revelations in the Epstein files, the Douglas police have been carrying out searches at properties tied to Andrew, and the latest development sees the British government pledge to release more files relating to his appointment as the UK's trade envoy in 2001. Is this a crisis for Andrew alone, or is this really extend to the rest of the royal family and their public standing and trust in the institution? Because that has fallen dramatically since the Queen's death.
Yeah, I think that the royal family's done a pretty solid job so far of making sure that they contain the Andrew situation. For a long time, it's been made clear that the family distanced themselves from him. The King's statement, by the way, I mean, rightly or wrongly, on the arrest of Prince Andrew, didn't refer to my brother. And it was a very cold statement. In some ways, I sort of think that's not so good. In some ways, a little bit of sort of human expression wouldn't have gotten amiss, I think, there. But of course, the King and the royal family are understandably terrified of any sort of contagion from the Andrew problem. I think it is going to stick with him, but isn't it? It is extraordinary, Rita, that this is the Epstein story, which is rolling on and on, is actually having the most profound effects really in the UK. Where the Prince Andrew story, among others, is just. I mean, this is what Keir Starmer's government are trying to address. They're trying to address why Prince Andrew was made a trade envoy years ago under a Labour government. What were the processes and so on? I mean, Keir Starmer, who doesn't have much luck, is now just as he's trying to roll out some initiative, if you can call it that, of his own. Is ending up having to talk endlessly about a disgraced royal.
Now to a disturbing story, Douglas, and a warning for viewers. Some of you may find the following footage distressing. It is graphic footage. This is a story out of Sydney of men being brutally bashed by groups of young Islamist men. In one case captured on video, but much of it too disturbing to put to air, even with pixelation. In this attack, you see this young university student being left for dead after the assailant repeatedly stumps on his head while yelling, "You want to be gay," and "Islamic State lives." But Douglas, despite the brutality of the attack and the victim suffering a broken nose, an eye socket, deep facial cuts and other serious injuries, his attacker walked free on 9 months probation with no conviction recorded. And he's suspected of other similar attacks. We've seen this phenomenon of gay men being targeted by Islamists in a number of cities across Europe. What is the answer, Douglas?
The answer is to apply the law to its fullest extent. I can't imagine how someone can just walk out of a court after being found to have committed such an appalling, violent crime. I mean, it's for the Australian legal system to address that. But would this be the case if the culprit had been anyone else? Would it be the case if the victim had been anyone else? These are questions that the Australian legal system and politicians have to address. But the real thing that underlies all of this, Rita, is, as you mentioned, there has actually been quite a lot of such attacks, not least, for instance, in Ireland a couple of years ago, when an Islamist extremist beheaded 2 gay men. Now, these sorts of attacks are the sort of thing which, in a previous generation, we'd have a load of human rights groups, we'd have a load of campaigning politicians and others highlighting the targeting of gay men by religious bigots. But why the silence now? Why the silence from all these groups? Why the silence even from the LGBTQIA plus groups and others? Why are they not making an issue of this? And I think we all know the answer. which is the hierarchy that has been created in recent years, in which certain victims are more important than other victims, certain perpetrators can be deemed less guilty than other perpetrators. And that's the two-tier justice system that people have identified in the UK. It's clearly going on in Australia as well. It's clearly going on across most Western countries. I would just plead with people to not allow such double standards to go on, because if you do, then attacks like that will not be one-offs. They will grow increasingly common because it'll be clear to certain people that the law does not apply to them and that certain victim groups do not need to be cared for, pitied, or have attacks on them prevented.